From Hot FM, this is Esau Williams with This Week in Politics. This week, we hear from the Gambia government on the arrest of youths and its potential responses to protests planned in December.
The 3-year Jotna is just one of many people or movements in this country that also have a right to ensure that their government listen to them.
But will you respond to their demands?
If the demands are brought to us in a civil manner, in a peaceful manner, we will listen and then respond.
In politics, as in life, perception is reality, and the arrest of youths, including the rapper and activist Ali Cham, who goes by the stage name Killer Ace, by members of the anti-crime unit, added to what looks like a situation where security forces act with impunity. This on the back of the heavy-handed use of force on protesters in Brikama by the police intervention unit. I called up the Gambia's information minister, Ebrima Sillah, and asked him if the events of the past few days amounted to a difficult week for the government that had come into power on the pretext of being different from the Jammeh regime.
Well, thank you so much, Isha, for inviting us to your program. As far as the arrest of Killer Ace and some of the youths were concerned, I have not got the details, and the police have still not produced the details as to the reasons why they were arrested. However, as you know, in all civilized democracies, police are empowered by national constitutions to effect arrest if they reasonably suspect you have some issues or questions to answer regarding investigations that they are conducting. In the course of that arrest, we just have to ask a few questions, like, for example, the nature of the arrest. Have you been manhandled? And in this case, I have asked the police, and they categorically told me that that was not the case. Indeed, yes, they have arrested these people, and they were doing the investigations, and they complied with the constitutional limit of 72 hours of detention. And if you don't charge, you release the suspect. So, this is what happened. And as far as I know, the police said that the investigations are ongoing, and whenever these people are needed again, they will be asked to report to the police.
But what Mr. Cham, Killer Ace, told me in an interview was that he was brought into a room, a video of the incident which involved the torching of the head of the anti-crime unit's home was played, and he was asked if he was present. That hardly constitutes rigorous investigation. I'm sure you would agree.
Well, the fact that the police have a degree of evidence, which is a video they are going through, shows that they are doing a serious investigation. It may be that those that they suspect were there probably were not there, or they were there. But what is important is that they are doing an investigation. We also have to understand that it is normal that when police think that they have a reasonable degree of suspicion of an individual's involvement or alleged involvement in an activity that tantamounts to breaking the law, they can invite you for questioning, or they can arrest you, detain you pending further investigation. If they have no further evidence, they can release you while the investigation goes on. This is normal in all police duties. What we should all promote is that we ensure that our law enforcement officers comply with the very law that they rely on to do their job.
Indeed, and what you paint, in theory, is a picture of everything being balanced. Unfortunately, in this particular instance, things weren't balanced. For example, Mr. Ace alleges that he asked why he was being arrested, for example. As you mentioned, in every civilized democracy, the police have a job, and part of that job is to inform alleged suspects as to the reason why they're being arrested, that people aren't just bungled and put in the backs of lorries and driven off to detention centers.
Well, you rely on the evidence of what Killer Ace told you. You did not get to the police to know exactly what happened there. I have no issues with what he told you, because I believe that probably, he was telling you the truth. But I think, it would also be good to hear from the police, because I doubt whether our security forces will just jump up and then start arresting people without having evidence, especially in a case that they said they have been investigating. Now, if they have no proof or if they have no evidence against the people that they suspect to be behind this thing, of course they will be released and they will be let go. But it is important that we all comply with the law, that we all understand that nobody is above the law, that there should be no silver bullet when it comes to dealing with people of this country with regards to issues related to a very complex matter like this one.
Putting the details of this case to one side, can we look at the general perception of what's going on here? So we had demonstrations in Brikama where it was said on this program by the president of the Gambia Bar Association that the police intervention unit were heavy-handed. They unleashed a barrage of force on defenseless protesters. Looking at that, looking at these arrests, do you think it paints a very bad picture of what this government is about? If your whole idea is that you're trying to... if I finish the question, sorry, that the whole idea of this government is a departure from the past, from the Yahya Jammeh tactics and style of arresting and heavy-handedness, that this paints you in a bad light.
I have to admit that any alleged brutality by the security forces unleashed on the civilians or the general public is, of course, a dent on the image of the government, and I think we are very mindful of that. And the issue of Killer Ace and the other youths that were arrested, I think, have nothing to do with what happened in Brikama. The issue of Brikama was a great lesson for even the police, and then a post-mortem was done about the operations, and I think we've all learned a great lesson from that. But the issue of what happened in Serekunda, I think, was not a demonstration, it was a riot, where people we have seen went out. They did not only burn down the house of a senior police officer, but they also burned down certain police stations. They looted, and some of them came out throwing stones, threatening people in their vehicles, and then, forcing them, and they were extorting money from some of them. Those ones are not protesters. Those were rioters, and then the law should be very firm with the people who break the law in the name of democracy. I think, when we all come out and demonstrate peacefully, nobody will have any problem with that. And I think even our security forces understand that peaceful protest is part of democracy. But in the exercise of your right to protest, I think we should all endeavor to act with civility so that we also are mindful of the fact that the others who are not part of the demonstration also deserve that respect, and their rights have to be also protected by the security officers.
To what extent do you think the failure of the security sector reforms has to do with this? Because there's an argument out there, a theory that says that the security services do not know how to police in a democracy, that 22 years of dictatorship have completely framed their reaction and response to demonstrators. They automatically see demonstrators as troublemakers, for example.
The security sector reform is an ongoing process. Yes, we all understand and acknowledge that we came from a very difficult situation of 22 years where we need a proper reorientation of our security forces, and even the heads of the various security services in this country acknowledge and understand that, and that's why they are all cooperating with the ongoing reform. Indeed, it is not only about the security forces, but the lack of equipment to deal with situations that we found ourselves in this country. You know that during the last 22 years, anytime people came out or they wanted to do something, the first thing that you notice was that the security forces were armed to teeth with AK-47 and other deadly weapons.
Is it ever permissible that the police should attend demonstrations with weapons? Because I still have to hear a story of a member of the public, for example, shooting at police to warrant the barrage of force that's been used, the AK-47s, the tear gas, the rubber bullets that's been fired. I mean, do they actually really need that at peaceful demonstrations in the Gambia?
Well, mark the word peaceful. When demonstrations are peaceful, in the first place, the police don't need any weapons to actually guide and control that kind of crowd, because you know that it is a peaceful demonstration, and then they are orderly and they are civil. When it turned out to be something else, then the right equipment have to be used, such as probably the right gears that we normally see in other countries, also other light weapons that have rubber bullets and tear gas and other kinds of support crowd control tools. Unfortunately, in the Gambia, until when this new government came to office, these things were never available to the security forces. And that is why, we recognize as a country, as a government, we need to reorient, but we also need to re-equip our security forces to deal with these type of things in a manner that befits civility.
Can you also explain to us then the rationale behind purchasing a water cannon to deal with potential demonstrations in December?
No. I doubt whether any government will just buy the right equipment for your security forces with an event in mind. It is important that we put this thing into context. Anything that this government does to help our security forces is to ensure that they respond, and they respond effectively any situation that demands the response. And as a result, it is not true to say that the water cannon was bought to deal with the situation in December. It may even be that nothing will happen in December, but it is important that the security forces have the right equipment in this country and they are ready for any situation, because the peace and tranquility of the country should also be safeguarded. The primary responsibility of any country is to protect the lives and properties of your citizens.
But you say that no one purchased any equipment with a specific event in mind, were your very words.
Course.
But I'd like to draw your attention to the quote of Henry Gomez, who is a senior advisor to Adama Barrow, who went on...
No, but Henry Gomez is not a government official.
If I could ask the question...
Servant.
Indeed. He's an advisor to the president.
No, yeah, but when major decisions are taken, Henry Gomez is not there. So, he has a right, like any other Gambian, to his opinion. What he said may not even be true. The truth of the matter is that when government does things, they don't do it because government has certain dates in mind. No. You want to control things, and then, you want to ensure that every day and every hour and every minute, the security of the citizens and their properties are solely and robustly defended and controlled and protected.
Right. So the question I was trying to ask was that Mr. Gomez went out and said clearly that anyone who came out in December to protest against the 3 years for Adama Barrow would be visited with hot water from the water cannon that was purchased. That was as a result of a specific event in mind.
No, but that is Mr. Gomez's opinion.
So we should ignore everything Mr. Gomez says.
I did not hear him say that, and I think we should ignore all what... If, for example, I, as the information minister who speaks on behalf of the government, comes out and say that, then, I think, we should all be worried. But, look, which government will just wake up in the morning and categorically come out to say that this is our policy, that, we are going to pour water on the people?
So we should completely ignore what Henry Gomez said?
I'm telling you, this did not come from the government, and it was not a source of information from the government.
So why didn't Adama Barrow stop him at that rally and say, hang on a second, what you're saying is wrong, and it doesn't come from the government? Because the president was there.
Please, so I think, that is too much of a demand on the president. Look, this was an open rally, a political rally. People talked about issues and their opinion. It may be that most may not even be in line with laid down procedures and also government policies. But we should stop just generalizing, picking things, and then try to paint a picture as if that is the rigid position of the government. No, that is not true.
Well, in addition to what he said, he also did make reference to events of April 10th and 11th under Yahya Jammeh, in which students were shot.
I am not going to answer questions related to Henry Gomez. If you have issues with what he said, please call him and let him answer those questions. I am here to answer questions related to government and government operations. If you have issues that a private citizen said I'm not going to be burdened with all these questions. Please provide an opportunity for him on your platform to come and clear himself.
Indeed, that's fair enough. And we will ask you about government policy in a moment. That's Ebrima Sillah, the Minister of Information of the Gambia. You're listening to This Week in Politics on Hot FM 104.3 with me, Esau Williams. And the program comes to you from Bakau, Newtown. And our guest this week is the Minister of Information, Ebrima Sillah. And Mr. Sillah, you did mention fairly enough that you would be responsible for answering questions on government policy and not private individuals airing their opinion. If I can ask you about the 3 years Jotna, put that to one side, but let's focus on the reason why you don't think, or the president does not think, that a promise he made should be fulfilled.
As you know, when the coalition was formed and then they contested the election, this was part of the many reasons that they gave. Now, when the coalition came to power, a lot of reform processes have started. We have seen the constitutional review process, which is ongoing. We have seen the TRRC, and we have seen a lot of other processes, the security sector reform, which are yet to be completed. Now, if, for example, as the demand is right now, the president should honor the 3-year promise and he resigns, which was not something that the coalition partners signed among themselves. If, for example, the president resigns today, what are you going to have? It's a situation where first we either have the current vice president continue the term who was not elected by the Gambian people, or we have snap elections. And you know right now, if we were to have the snap elections in December, it is the 1997 constitution that we will use. It is the same old voter register that we will have to use. You want to think that, from now against December, Gambia has the necessary resources to conduct elections that will be seen as credible, free, and fair? I think, this is an issue that the political parties themselves have to sit around and discuss and then, stop this merry-go-round the issue and then, the Gambian people, because the constitution is very clear. When the electoral commissioner was announcing the results of the victory of President Adama Barrow, it was clearly said that duly elected to serve the term of 5 years. And this is the position of the Constitution. Now, when they did their own private arrangements, it is important that they come out and then clarify these things so that the country can be at peace. But in the process, what we should all endeavor to do is to protect the peace and stability of the Gambia. That is important for even to think about even any protest for a 3-year movement.
So what do you make of the counter-argument to what you're saying, that the Gambian people were offered a prospectus in which it was said that Adama Barrow, in his own words, would stay for 3 years, after which he would step down, not contest any subsequent elections, and in his own words, go back to his business, that he was a businessman and not a politician. And people voted, but people voted on that prospectus. What do you make of that argument?
I understand very well what you are saying. I was on the same platform on Thursday with one of the coalition leaders who, in fact, was prominent in the build-up to the December 2016 presidential election. And he said clearly that they all, campaign on this. But it was, an issue that was never signed. Now, when they were also discussing this matter, they all exactly knew also the constitutional provision that mandates a sitting president to serve a 5-year term. I think, a whole lot of things, were not properly taken care of. But that was not also, something that we can heap on the coalition leaders. What is important right now as a country is to sit and dialogue and discuss and come up with, a formidable way forward so that the country can move on. Because all these counter arguments back and forth will not solve this problem. when you violate the Constitution, it is very clear the consequences. If, for example, those that are saying that presidents should serve for 3 years, if, for example, their arguments should hold today, you also know the consequences that we will face as a country. Because first, the electoral register, we all know, is fraught with a lot of fictitious, names that should not have been in the electoral roll in the first place. We all know that, the 1997 Constitution has some discriminatory clauses there that, barred a whole lot of potential Gambians, from taking part in the elections in this country. We also know that the resources are even not there. So why should you think that a president who is sitting and is delivering and, is mandated by the Constitution to serve for 5 years, should just come up and say, just because people are making noise, I will have to resign because this is what we did, campaign for. And, those people who campaigned for this did not even sign this agreement. So I think it is important, we all, think about this critically. We think about the Gambia and look at the issue from a critical point of view and then, start discussing and then come up with something tangible to move this country forward.
Indeed, and thinking about it from a critical point of view, this demand for Mr. Barrow to step down did not come out of thin air. It came out of a pronouncement he himself made.
No, my dear. When the pronouncement was made, I told you it was during the campaign period. And you know that when the pronouncement was made, certain things should have been, made very clear that before we do this, a whole lot of conditions have to be met. Those things were not done. Although, this is still, an intellectual debate, whether it should be, because it also, borders on constitutionality.
So what you're saying, in effect, is that if Mr. Barrow were to step down, that would be a violation of the Constitution, in your view?
No. I'm not saying that if you were to stop, people can resign, But what I'm saying is that for somebody who is working and delivering and, he's mandated by the Constitution to serve for 3 years, you don't expect that person just to resign because, they campaigned for it and, this campaign, promise was not even signed. It was a document that was not signed by anybody. So the coalition leaders, I'm saying, should come out and then, come up with a position that will save the country from all this back and forth.
So what do you then make of the point he made to the BBC while he was still a candidate for the elections in 2016, when he said to the BBC that he would be a transition president, he would only serve for 3 years? Do we discount that as well?
No, so you are going back and forth on this issue. My answer still remains that the coalition leaders need to come out and then clear all these things so that, the country can move on. And they should have done this a long time ago, when they realized that all the parties did not sign, to the point that one of the political party leaders even said that, we should respect the constitutional provisions of 5 years so that, the transition period can move on. When all those things were coming out, the coalition leaders should have convened a meeting and then come up with a common position. This did not happen. Now, because there is a lot of noise about this issue, it is high time that, they come out and then have a meeting. This is a country that is known for, compromises. We can sit and discuss and then, come up with a common agenda that is in the interest of the country.
And one other quick point. You did mention earlier that the 1997 Constitution, which is still in force, is got a flawed voter roll and electoral roll, and it's got problems with it, and we can't, in your words...
No, it's not the Constitution that has a flawed voter roll.
The voter...
But I'm saying that, it is, certain sections in the Constitution that deals with the conduct of elections in this country actually seem to be discriminatory.
So do you believe then, if you're saying that it's somehow flawed and discriminatory, and you said there are problems, your words, with the electoral roll earlier, do you then believe that puts into question the legitimacy of Adama Barrow because he was elected under that constitution?
No. I mean, you see, you have to understand one thing. People want to work hard to make sure that they have the best of constitution. And that is what is currently going on with the review of the constitutional review process. Okay? So now every Gambian is working very hard to ensure that we have a constitution and we have an electoral system that represents all of us.
Right. And finally, the demonstrations, you did mention earlier about peaceful demonstrations. The demonstrations that, as I'm sure you're well aware of, are being planned for December, you know, for whether they're right or not, whether they're legitimate or not, they've been planned for December. And the leaders of those demonstrations have come on this program and have said that they'll keep demonstrating until Adama Barrow goes. What's the government's stance towards that? Are you going to let them continue to demonstrate, or are you going to somehow intervene with the police forces?
Peaceful demonstration is part of democracy. They can come out and demonstrate so long it is peaceful, but the peace and spirit of the country will also be jealously safeguarded. That is extremely very important even for themselves. I mean, yes, of course, police will be there because, I mean, when you are demonstrating, it is important that the police are also there to help you. I mean, to guide you and to protect you, because in case there is a counter demonstration, it may, you know, become violent, and that is why you have the security forces there to ensure that there is peace and order.
So will you allow these people to demonstrate for as much as they want?
But why will they not, be allowed to demonstrate? Because peaceful demonstration is part of democracy. When you riot, it's completely different from demonstration.
Right, we're not talking about riots. We're not talking about riots. I'm just saying peaceful demonstrations.
Because we have heard some of the statements where some of the people are saying that they will burn down, the police stations. They will. Some of us, our names were even mentioned in some audios by some of the leaders of the 3-year Jotna, saying that they have known our addresses and they are prepared to come and then burn down our places. So that is not demonstration. That's riot.
Right.
And when you riot, the law is very clear about
it's
that.
Illegal.
So
right.
That is illegal. That is illegal. So that's what I'm saying. So long you are conducting yourself in a peaceful way, no government will stop you from that, because that is a right.
And let me ask you a political question then, quickly to close. You made mention about democracy, allowing people to protest peacefully.
Yes.
But also in democracies, the reason why people protest is because they've got a grievance, and the government also has to respond or listen to what the people have to say and act in a way that assuages the protesters. Will that be done with this government, with the 3 years Jotna movement?
Of course. No, it's not only 3-year movement. I don't want to respond to only this 3-year movement thing. Any citizen who has a concern, and you don't even need to come out to to demonstrate in the streets. You can petition. You can go to the radio stations and then vent your frustration. You can stand on a political rally and then political platform and then make a pronouncement. All these things are signs of people protesting about things that are happening in their country. When that happens, of course, government will listen and then listen keenly to have quick solutions to those concerns, because we need to respond to those concerns. It is not only about the 3-year Jotna. The 3-year Jotna is just one of many people or movements in this country that also have a right to to ensure that their government listen to them.
But will you respond to their demands?
If the demands are brought to us in a civil manner, in a peaceful manner, we will listen and then respond. Of course, it is the duty of the government to respond to the concerns of the citizenry. So we will do that.
Ebrima Sillah, Minister of Information, thank you very much indeed for coming on This Week in Politics.
Thank you.
And that's it from This Week in Politics, the Gambia's political program of record. From me, Esau Williams, until the same time next week, goodbye.